Rebecca, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks so much for visiting Charlesbridge today. I feel so lucky that we get to talk about the ripple effect. As you know, we were so lucky to work together on Worst Case Colin, your middle grade novel in verse. How do you describe it now that it's out in the world? How do you summarize it?
This is a story that kind of encapsulates all my favorite things in middle grade fiction. So it's friendship, it's family, it's small town charms, it's silly pranks, and it's, of course, as you can gather from the cover, ice cream. So it's really a sweet, heartfelt story. It's probably the happiest book I've written so far. But writing a happy book has some challenges too, like having enough stakes and tension, and that's something you really helped me kind of build and layer into the story. So I'm grateful for your collaboration on this one.
Yeah. It definitely came to me on submission during a time where we all needed more joy in our lives. But tell me a little bit about your main character.
Sure. There's not much happening in the town of Kettleby, which is a fictional New England town, which is where our main character lives. Zella Trudy is the class clown of 6th grade, and this is something that she has a lot of pride in. She's always ready to make something happen in this sleepy little town of Kettleby. However, lately she feels like she's kind of fading into the background a little bit. Her mother is perpetually stressed about business at the family ice cream shop. Her grandfather is experiencing some memory issues due to dementia, and even her 2 best friends seem to be sort of outgrowing her. And so Zella decides that if only she can devise the most epic end-of-the-year prank, everything will get better, and she'll leave this lasting mark on her school and her community. Her big ideas kind of get out of control, and of course her major prank plans go awry, and the entire class is punished, and then Zella is at fault. And so thankfully, she's given a generous second chance to make things right. And so in doing this, she devises something called the ripple effect. Yeah. And it's through these sort of subtle acts of thoughtfulness that something beautiful begins to grow and kind of expand beyond her school and into the larger community. And it turns out that friendship, redemption, and acts of kindness taste sweeter than the family's famous raspberry ripple ice cream.
I think what also really struck me is the concept of second chances, especially just for anyone, but kids, as they're learning to navigate the world. And so I just wonder, with all those things you touched upon, if there's something in the book that you can really relate to.
Definitely. I always say all my books are kind of a collage of my life. I rarely model a character too closely to myself or someone in particular that I know, but they're just these beautiful collages of experiences and people. Although I do jokingly say that, don't make me mad or I'll make you the villain in my next novel, but none of that's happening here. But yeah, there's a lot of my life. I think we both enjoyed silly pranks growing up. That was something I enjoyed as a kid and I still love now. It's sort of the multi-generational, intergenerational story. I had wonderful bonds with my grandparents, though they didn't live with us. And now my children have these beautiful relationships with their grandparents. It's very common in my husband's culture to live in a household with your parents and grandparents and aunts and uncles. It's kind of this beautiful chaos. Yeah. And so I wanted to capture a little bit of that in the story. The small town charm. I grew up in a small town in Massachusetts, and that's what Kettleby is sort of modeled after, sort of these abandoned mill towns. And of course, a love of ice cream. Yeah. That was easy.
Oh my gosh. Speaking of the ice cream, you have to tell me a little bit more about what your local ice cream shop did for your book launch.
Yeah. So we just had the book launch event recently, and we even have a pint of it here. Raspberry Ripple, Westside Creamery in West Acton, Mass, graciously made the signature flavor, which is not actually on the cover because it's a chocolate base, but they made the chocolate ice cream with the raspberry swirl and the white chocolate chips and maybe a touch of magic. That's a special ingredient, and we served it at the book launch.
Tell me a little bit about what was really enjoyable for you to write.
I loved writing Zella's chapters. Yeah. She was the voice that kind of came to me first. She's just a lovable goof. I see myself a little bit in her. She's well-intentioned, but, sometimes the execution falls flat. She's a person with a million ideas at any given moment, which is very much kind of my scatterbrained self. She wants to make people laugh. She wants to make people smile, and she's earnest. She's also 12, and, it's awkward, and life is hard, and you're figuring out friend groups and where you fit in your family and in broader, society. And so she's doing her best. I loved her chapters, especially with her grandfather. I think that was a nice foil to some of the rambunctious silliness. There's some really quiet, sweet, tender moments with them by the creek and out in nature. I also love some of the other POVs. I think the beauty of fiction is that it allows us to get into another character's shoes and see the world from someone else's viewpoint. And so writing those other points of view, we don't really have a villain per se in this, but there are some antagonistic characters. And I think showing readers that even those characters, they have their own stories, right? Everybody's dealing with something beneath the surface that we might not appreciate. And so kind of getting a chance to dive into their heads and their home lives and show that to readers, I think was really special.
I fell in love with Zella immediately. Lovable goof is a great way to describe her. Do you have any background in comedy?
I think that might be a function of having two very silly little girls at home. And so I had the perfect, little humans to model this character after. And they were, my oldest daughter was the very first reader, other than you, of this book. And of course, she's very brutally honest. If something's not funny, she'll tell me. And so it helps to have that beta reader check in and make sure you're landing with your target audience.
Rebecca, tell me a little bit about what you hope readers will take from your book or feel or just kind of identify in the pages of this beautiful story.
Like Worst Case Cullen, I think I would just love any of my books to help a child feel less alone, to feel seen, to help build empathy and awareness about all sorts of situations. I hope it inspires kind of greater generosity and compassion, that kind of levity and that light and that kindness to others. But speaking of generous, thank you for your generous editing and kind of shepherding of these stories and helping me grow as a writer and really encouraging us to take some creative risks together and I think create some beautiful stories.
Oh, that's so kind of you. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you
about the ripple effect.
I'm so glad it's out in the world. I just can't wait for more middle grade readers to continue to find your work.
Likewise.